Hello and welcome to PowerDrift. Throughout the lockdowns, we've stayed safe and that's how we've emerged stronger, but vaccination changes everything. Today we're talking about the vehicle scrappage policy that's being discussed publicly, and you have to remember that globally vehicle scrappage is not new. Most of these policies date back to 2009, so that's years ago in many countries. In India, we've been discussing it for a couple of years. The official policy has only just arrived, and remember, it's not law yet. So it doesn't actually mean anything for your private car, no matter how old it is as of today, but there are changes coming that could affect you. And in this video, we'll try and break it down into something you can understand easily. Now, let's understand what vehicle scrappage is. Vehicle scrappage is an official system. And remember, vehicle scrappage happens in India all the time. People go to bhangarwalas, kabadiwalas, hand over their cars. They get some documentation out of which they take to the RTO and cancel their registrations. However, this is an informal sector, which means what happens to the metal, what happens to the fluids in the car, and what kind of prices do you get from these scrap dealers is currently uncontrolled. What the government is proposing is an official framework in which this can be handled. Now you might wonder, why is this important? Why is the government suddenly concerned with old cars? Is this just a way to get you to buy a new car? Now let's remember two things. Buying a new car is a huge advantage because today's cars are faster, more fuel economical, they have much better pollution ratings, and they are a hell of a lot safer than anything that you're driving from as little as 6 or 7 years ago. That's one. Second, also remember, India's biggest problem of pollution is not the current car population, it's the old car population. And according to the ministry statistics, there are more than 17 million really old trucks out there. And I know that you've seen some of them out there spewing black smoke everywhere. There's also about 5.1 million old cars, and these are the cause of the majority of India's air pollution. A more fuel economical car will also mean a lower import bill for fuel, so there are a lot of advantages in vehicle scrapping. But remember, what we are talking about today is a proposal by the central government, which means no matter where you live in India, it doesn't apply to you until your state government adopts the law. And that means they also have the freedom to change the numbers around. So the numbers that we're going to discuss, and we will focus on private cars because that's you, the numbers aren't final. Your state government might choose to raise certain numbers or depress certain numbers or avoid certain taxes entirely. Shall we begin? So the process of scrappage itself is a fairly simple process to understand. Your vehicle is composed of fluids, there's lots of metals in there are lots of plastics and glass elements in there, and the scrappage policy basically says that you take this vehicle to an authorized, it's called a registered vehicle scrappage facility. You take it to an authorized center where they will look at the car, give you a valuation, they will give you some amount of money for scrapping your car. They'll also generate documentation we will discuss separately, and after that they basically rip your car apart, and now the scrap aluminium, the scrap iron can be sold back, the plastics can be sent into recycling centers and so on and so forth. And the idea is that a scrap dealer today, the unauthorized ones, the kabadiwalas, etc., are already doing this in whatever method they know. The problem is it's not a controlled process, which means, say, the coolant, which is a fairly dangerous fluid to have around, you don't know what they're doing with the old coolant. The engine oil similarly needs to be disposed of properly. You don't know what they're doing with that. The registered vehicle facility will have an authorized way to dispose of chemicals safely, to be able to put the metals and plastics back in the recycling system safely. So it basically controls what happens at the end of life of your car. As of today, what the government is proposing is that commercial vehicles older than 15 years will have to be mandatorily scrapped. All government cars older than 15 years will also have to be mandatorily scrapped. But for private cars, it's 20 years, and so far it's voluntary, which means if you have a 23-year-old car that you're in love with, there is no pressure on you to go back and get it scrapped and replace it with a new car. You can continue to use that car. Remember, the challenge is it must pass the fitness test, and the government is going to make the fitness test automated, which means it will be harder to cheat that test. What the government will also do is it will make it more and more expensive for you to keep an old car around, and while giving you certain incentives to get a new car to replace this car. So the simple answer to that question is that vehicle scrappage is not about profit. It's about you getting a new car, which is a far superior automobile to drive, and you getting some incentives back from the scrapping of your old car. To give you an example, if you go to a kabadiwala today and hand over your car, he might pay you 8 to 10 rupees a kilo. If you go to a registered vehicle facility, he might be able to give you 15 or 18 rupees a kilo, which means the amount of money you get back for a car you're scrapping is quite a bit more. But today, once you scrap the car, you generate paperwork, you still have to go to the RTO and deregister your car, which means cancelling the registration. And a lot of Indians don't do either of these two things, and abandoning cars is quite common. So when a car becomes too expensive to re-register, to repair or to fix, a lot of Indians are just quite happy to leave it somewhere and let it rot and sort of go into the ground. What the vehicle scrappage policy tries to attack is both of these things, where you get a little bit more money back, but what they're saying is a lot of the incentives will accrue to you not at scrappage, but when you try to replace this car, that's where the real benefits happen. Given the fact that the government has been discussing the scrappage policy for 2 or 3 years and now they have an official draft policy out, I would say that they're taking this very seriously. I think the Minister, Mr. Gadkari, has actually put out quite a bit of money, I think 10,000 crores or something like that towards this project, including the setting up of automated fitness centers as well as the scrapping facilities will be registered. Maruti Suzuki, Tata and Mahindra have already announced that they will have recycling stations where you can take back your old car and they will recycle the car for you. So I think the process is pretty serious. The difference between the global picture and in India is in most countries, scrappage policy has not been a continuous process. For example, in the United States, I think in 2009 when they started, they put out, I think it was $3 billion or something like that, and it took them about 11 or 12 months to run out of money, and when the money ran out, the scrappage policy was stopped until they figured out what to do next. So in a lot of places, scrappage policies are discontinuous. What it sounds like in India is it is going to be a part of our system. But when does it become part of our system is completely dependent on your state. So because transportation is a state subject, the center can't tell Maharashtra what to do. And in that sense, Maharashtra has to take the draft policy, look at it and say, yes, this looks good, this looks like a good idea, and implement it. Once they implement it, does it become law? And there is, in theory, a lot of ways that a state government could avoid implementing the law for a really long time if they don't want to. If you want an example of this, just look up how octroi system worked in India and how long it took for various state governments to get rid of octroi entirely. I think that's a personal choice. So for example, if you're in love with, let's say, the ambassador and you want to buy an ambassador, you don't really have a choice. You are going to get something that is either very close to scrapping or has passed the date of scrapping, and you're going to have to deal with the fitness issues and keeping it running. So that's just a normal part of the process. But as far as what the government is trying to say is that if you're driving a really old car, here are some incentives to get a new one. It upgrades your safety, performance, etc., and it will give you brakes. So for example, the proposed brake is a 25% brake in your road tax. The proposed brake is that your registration fee will be completely waived off. Now obviously the state governments will not like this because this registration tax goes into their pockets, and they're already complaining about other things like GST credits and stuff from the center to the state. So the state government will have some resistance to this. Your fitness test will be automated, which means you can't really cheat. They are also proposing that the manufacturers give a 5% discount for a new purchase that is replacing an old scrapped car. Again, the manufacturers will say, look, input costs are up, the GST has caused issues, BS6 has caused investments. In this scenario, taking more money out of the manufacturer's pocket is probably not fair to them. And a lot of analysts think that the reaction will be, if the government says 5% discount, then vehicle prices will go up 5% and then you'll get a 5% discount. So it's not set in stone yet. The government is clearly making it easier for you to buy a new car in the replacement of an old one, but do you have to replace an old one? Fortunately for you, still remains voluntary. Now, the thing that you have to understand about vehicle scrappage is that it has a lot of positive benefits in the sense of the scrappage centers, etc. will create jobs. In the sense, removing old vehicles from our roads will also mean better pollution control. It will mean more fuel economy, which means less fuel consumed overall. There will be incentives that if you switch from a petrol car to an electric car, you don't have to pay road tax at all. So there are a lot of monetary benefits that you get from replacing the car. But the fundamental thing you have to understand is that this is a lot more serious for the commercial vehicle and fleet owners who have no choice about it. They are going to have to get rid of their vehicles, and globally this has been received both positively and negatively. The positive benefits of employment generation, etc. are fairly well understood, but there are economists who say that a destructive policy generally doesn't create a positive benefit. Look up the broken windows parable if you like. It will give you an idea that destruction as a way of creating economical stimulus is not always a good idea. So there are pros and cons to this, but I would say as of today, you don't have to worry about your car. If you're in love with it, you are going to get to keep it. But if you have an old car that you've been planning to get rid of, the most profitable, the most let's say charitable way to get rid of it is going to officially become a system in India shortly, and that's what we should be looking forward to. Thank you so much for watching. This is PowerDrift. India's best automotive content is right here. We've created a lot of videos for you, so do stay tuned. And if you haven't, do subscribe. It's just a matter of hitting a button and it's completely free. And if you hit the bell notification icon, when we have a new video, we'll send it right to you. Thank you so much for watching.